So, we should officially be live. I'm just going to give it a minute for the stream to catch up. Anybody in the audience, if the audio isn't working, please let me know with a comment. And of course, we'll try and fix that as soon as possible. But other than that, hello and welcome everyone to today's conversation again about careers in the space industry. If you've been here before, you know typically how this goes. This is our second edition of the Careers in the Space Industry webinar. As we wait for more people to join the stream, I would also invite you all to like the video, to share it with your friends, get more people in here. I think today we'll have a really great conversation. Thanks again for joining on this beautiful Saturday. My name is Kweku. I'm the founder of Space Hubs Africa, joined here as well with my co-host Nelly, who is our main promotions leader and all things. She works on a lot of different things in the company. Is almost a co-founder as well at Space Hubs Africa. For those that don't know, Space Hubs Africa is building an online African space network. So we have a community platform at community.spacehubs.africa that offers members different ways of getting involved in the industry or ways to learn about the space industry. And we're trying to build a community. So if you haven't joined already, if you're looking for a way to take part in the space industry, that's a good way to start. So I'd invite you all to join there. You can find out more as well by looking at the description of this video. So bringing us to today's discussion. Today's discussion, as mentioned, will be revolving around careers in the space industry. And here we have some great guests. So we have Tensai from Ethiopia. He's in his final year of a mechanical engineering student, and he's also been engaged with the Ethiopian Space Science Institute for a long time. And he also currently works with the Space Generation Advisory Council, where he serves at the national point of contact for Ethiopia. Tensai, you want to say hello? You're in mute.
Yeah, I forgot that. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be here, and I hope this webinar goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we also have Eldridge De Mello. Eldridge has been active in the space sector for quite some time, for 7 years already, working on the business development side as well as a project manager. And he also is actually a national point of contact at the Space Generation Advisory Council, this time for Angola. Eldridge, you want to say a few words?
Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. I was really excited when I got the invitation to be a part of this event today. So as Tensai said, I'm wishing you all a very good event today.
Thank you, Eldridge. Also happy to have you be a part of this. And then last minute addition, taking over from Rania, who you may have seen in the initial flyer, is Moataz Abdelazim. He does a lot of things. So he's been active with the Egyptian Space Agency on the educational front, and he's also the African Regional Coordinator for the Moon Village Association, and also works as a commercial sales manager at Leo Labs. Moataz, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, hey everyone. It's very nice to be joining you today. I'm excited for this session, and I want to shout out to Space Hubs Africa for getting this organized and working on creating a community for space engineers in Africa. So I'm excited to be talking about this topic today.
And we're happy to have you here as well. And Nelly, I think you're the only one who hasn't said anything yet, so you want to say hi to the crowd? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, hello everyone. Okay, everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, hi everyone. It's always good to be on the show again and talk about space and talk about Africa.
So for those of you that haven't, this is your first time at the Careers in Space webinar. Essentially, we'll be listening to the stories of each of our panelists here about how they got involved in the industry, what they're currently doing, and what advice they have for you and how you can take part yourself. So we'll basically just go around the table, we'll hear a bit more about their stories, and at the end we'll have a bigger panel discussion where we talk more generally about the space industry. So to start off with, we'll start off with Eldridge. Eldridge, how did you get in the space industry? Growing up, did you already know about space, or when was the first time you actually heard about space and thought maybe I could do something here, maybe I could be a part of it?
That was about 8 years ago. So growing up, I never really thought about space because to me, I grew up in the 90s. And when I was growing up, my country was going through a civil war. So there wasn't much development. It wasn't something that really kids growing up around me were thinking about space because also in terms of representation in Hollywood movies, which it's what we would always watch, you wouldn't see people like us being like astronauts. So we grew up thinking that this was something very hard to do. You needed to be very special. I mean, everybody's special, but it wasn't just something that I was thinking about while I was growing up. So for me, it really started about 8 years ago when my country decided to develop or implement a space program. And that's how my journey in the space industry really started. That's why I started like, how, wow. I'm curious about this. Let me try to read more. Let me try to study more. Let me shift my priorities into this space stuff. And eventually I started like getting confident and feeling, wow, this is not as it's hard, but it's not it's not impossible for people like us to do. So we can do it. And I started believing. And then that's how it all started for me.
So what were you doing actually before you got into the space industry? Were you working? Were you in school?
So before that, I was already working. I have a degree in information systems. So I was working as an information systems engineer. Database. It was really things that I like: coding, developing applications, developing software. That was my life. So eventually, when I had an opportunity to work in the space sector, in the Angolan space program, I thought that I would be working with databases, working with systems, developing systems and also running systems. But then my history went totally a different direction because we had an initial training and we went to Russia for training. And during this training, the people that were training us, they thought maybe I was too curious about telecommunications, and I really wanted to understand what's happening when a satellite's communicating with a ground station on the Earth. I was very curious about that, and I was really digging a lot into that. So they thought, hey, maybe your thing is not really systems. How about you focus on telecommunications? And then I started really sort of like another degree, because I had to learn from scratch telecommunications, which I did not have a background. And then eventually I became a senior specialist for the Ground Control Center, where I was actually in charge of a team that was like during satellites operations. So I had to make sure that the team was following the flight plan and all the procedures for operations.
So, I mean, how difficult was that transition? I mean, you come in thinking, okay, I have this degree in information systems. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I like. And now all of a sudden you have to switch to telecommunications. How did you do that? How easy was it to transition? And how did you approach that?
It was not easy at all. It was, I think for the previous decade was probably one of the hardest years of my life because I was already in my 20s, so I had to literally start from scratch, learning a lot of complex stuff, understanding, how, frequencies and all sorts of things about antennas, all the radio frequency equipments. But then, when you love something, that's where the motivation comes. And I really love challenges. I'm addicted to challenges. And that was a challenge. The moment I started like looking at it as a challenge, I was like, hey, if you're challenging me, let me show you what I can do. And so for me, my perspective changed. I was working really hard. Of course, I had to take a few nights that I would just be really doing my research, but combining research with practice, working on Saturdays, sort of trying to be perfect at what I was doing. To give you a quick example, one of the equipments that I had to work with was something called a spectrum analyzer. So you would use a spectrum analyzer to analyze the spectrum, the radio frequency spectrum, and it's very, very important, this equipment, because you can monitor the signals from the signal from your satellite. With this equipment, you can also see if you have noise within the signal, and then with the information that you get from this equipment, you're going to decide if you're going to increase the power, the transmission power, are you going to reduce. So for me to be able to master that specific equipment, it was a journey. And a funny story, I used to sleep with that equipment, you know, so on the side of my bed, just right on the side of my bed, I would put it there, go to bed, wake up in the morning, take that equipment as if it's my baby, and go back to work with it, you know. And it was a very expensive equipment. And I remember one day a superior told me, "Don't lose this equipment because it's more expensive than your car." so but then it was a good challenge, you know. I really enjoyed and overcoming that specific challenge was, for me, was a huge achievement.
So you really had to learn on the fly. So you were still working while you were learning. Did you have someone who was teaching you? Did you have to like find online resources? Like what was actually your process to learn this?
Well, we had a training program, but for me, I was lucky because I had a mentor. There's a gentleman in Angola. He's a huge expert. His name is Jazola. He's a huge expert in telecommunications. And for me, he was a mentor. He was guiding me through that time. He was helping me understand the concepts, you know, helping me improve. So his presence in my life during that time was very important, and having that guidance. But definitely, so it's as I said earlier, when you're combining theory, so theory that you're getting from books, from training programs, and practice, most of the times you just can't go wrong.
Okay, so now you're working at the space industry. You're learning more about telecommunications. You're getting more involved. What happens next? Where did you go next?
So after some time, because working as a senior specialist in a mission control center, I had to work shifts, and you know, that was not something very exciting. At some point, when you're working in a mission control center and you're operating geostationary satellites, for those that don't know, most of the telecommunication satellites, they are in a geostationary orbit. So that means that in respect to Earth, the satellite is always in the same position. So if I'm working in a mission control center, babysitting this satellite that is always in the same position, there isn't much action happening. So there is two things. You want a little bit of action, but for you to have action, things have to go wrong. But you also don't want things to go wrong, right? At some point, the work becomes a little tedious, because another thing that a lot of people don't know, we see in movies, these guys operating satellites and like being super smart. In reality, that's not really how it works. When you're working in a mission control center, you usually have a daily flight plan. So all of your procedures are documented on what you have to do. So most of the time, you're not really thinking outside of the box during your work hours. You are following procedures. You are following things that have to be done. And for me, after some time, I felt that, as I said, I'm addicted to challenges. I thought that I was not being challenged anymore. So I started taking different challenges in terms of project management inside the space industry. And one of my first projects inside the space industry, probably connected to what Mohatas will talk about later on, but I went into the education side of things. So I started thinking, you know, how can we develop projects to teach the population on why are we investing in space technology? Because coming from Africa, Angola is in Africa, and I assume, because I talk to a lot of people in Africa and I've been in a couple of countries, it's very hard for you to convince someone why space technology is important. First of all, because most of people, they don't understand how our life would be if we spent one day without satellites. We use satellites for telecommunication, for navigation, so many applications that we do when you're using your phone today. It's possible because we have satellites in space. So I wanted to start translating that into simple terms to make people understand that, yes, we do need water, we need food, we need roads, we need education, but we can achieve this through investing in space. There is a way. So starting understanding more, diving deeper into the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, translating that, making the connection with space technology, showing like showing proof that look at these examples. We can have better water, we can have electricity, we can have better food production if we use satellite information this way and that way. So these were the first projects that I started managing in the space industry.
Okay, very interesting. Just to dial back really quickly, you're talking about being in the Mission Control Center. So for people who don't know what a Mission Control Center is, could you just give a high-level explanation of what actually goes on in the Mission Control Center, who's there, and like what do you actually do?
Yeah. So inside the the Mission Control Center is the place where you are operating satellites. In this place, in this facility, you have different specialists. So you don't have one person who knows everything. That's not how it works. So you have different teams, and each team has a responsibility within the operations of the satellite. So for example, you have guys whose expertise is on the health of the satellite. So when I'm talking about the health of the satellite, I'm talking about monitoring if the batteries are okay, what's the status of the power supply on the satellite, because remember, if your satellite has no power, it's dead. It's bad for your mission. You might probably lose your mission if you can communicate with the satellite. So making sure that the satellite also, you need to know that space is an environment where you have a lot of radiation, so you have a lot of heat in a part of the equipment that is facing directly the sun, but then it's also extremely low in terms of temperatures. So you need to understand that, and you have specific people who understand that, experts on that, and they monitor that. You have people who are experts in performing maneuvers. You need to understand that while a satellite is in space, you have different forces acting upon the satellite that might disrupt the orbit of the satellite. So you have people who have to plan and plan maneuvers, corrective maneuvers, and stuff like that. You have people like me whose expertise were on telecommunication, making sure there's telecommunication with the satellites, understanding all the telecommunication equipment. If something is wrong, we can analyze and find the root cause. You have people responsible for planning, making sure that they organize all these people in the Mission Control Center. And then at the top of this structure, you have a flight director. So the flight director is the person who is in charge of all the specialists inside the Mission Control Center.
Okay, so yeah, essentially the Mission Control Center is like the heart of the whole space mission. Without it, there's no way to talk to the satellites, there's no way to get the data from the satellites, there's no way to organize this entire project. So everything starts from the Mission Control Center, and that's like the heart of everything. Okay. And so going back then to the education side, so you felt a need, or you felt an interest to really try and explain to the general public the benefits of space. And why people should be interested in space technologies. So how did you start that? Were you just organizing local workshops? Were you just talking to your friends? What did you actually do to try and build up this knowledge base?
So the approach that I took was start. So I thought about podcasts, but at the time, this was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and at the time in my country, podcasts were not something so big.
This is in Angola, correct?
Yeah, in Angola.
Yeah.
So it was not something so big at that time, and probably not a lot of people would be getting the information. So then the other thing that I thought about was shooting videos. So I started shooting videos with my phone, explaining basic concepts of, I can show you guys later on, maybe on your Facebook page, I can post how I started shooting my videos with my phone, and just very homemade production, I didn't have I had a team, people were working with me. I wasn't doing this alone because it wouldn't be possible to do it alone. But we were dividing our tasks, like writing scripts, shooting, editing, going back to the computer, editing, and putting some special effects and stuff like that. But really, I thought, okay, let's do this in video, shoot videos, and explain in simple terms. The challenge was always to translate very complex terms into simple language that people can understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you were still doing this while you were working, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And so, I mean, at this point, you're doing so many different things, right? You have to learn more about telecommunications. You're involved in huge mission control centers and doing all these complex projects. And now you're also trying to educate people. Where did you find the time? Do you just not sleep at all, or how do you manage all of this?
I did sleep, I think, about 3 to 4 hours. But when you are really excited about something and when you love something, you don't feel like you're going over time. So, and that was the thing. So I was always very, during my day, I'm happy to do what I have to do, but then I'll also look forward to the time that I'll have allocated to start working on the space education, because I was seeing there was a huge impact nationally. Eventually, what we were doing with phones, and I started asking friends that had cameras, like I started thinking, let's go a step higher. Let's use professional cameras now. I couldn't buy professional cameras, so I had friends help me with the cameras from time to time. I had a friend. I didn't have money to buy professional lights, studio lights, so I had a friend who built me with paper boxes, some improvised studio lights. I have photos of all these, and we started going higher and higher, like improving our quality. And then eventually, we were not just doing in some bad environment with a bad background. Eventually, we're like improvising our own studio, learning all this stuff, using green screen, and then eventually getting actually professional cameras, by this time supported by the Angolan Space Program. So there was actually a budget at the time, like after a year, because of the impact, there was already a budget. The conditions were completely different. This thing was already on national television. So I was like, wow, I really love doing this, because I could see the impact, and people were like, hey, I watched that video explaining all this stuff, and it's so cool. And they didn't know, like, I was part of the
Yeah.
of creating that. Yeah, so
The
it was
brains
very
behind it. And so, I mean, at some point you decided to get your master's and to get a postgraduate. How did that transition happen? So you're in Angola, you're working, you're doing educational stuff. What is the next step for you, and how did you come to that next step?
So as I was managing this educational projects, I started also managing CubeSat projects and CanSat projects. So I had, very rough experience in terms of project management. But then for me, this was a new field, and I thought, wow, let me challenge myself again. So I want to get good at this. I think I love managing projects. Maybe I should do a master's. That's how I went to do a master's in project management, and I've been managing projects ever since.
Okay. And so what type of projects, when you say managing projects, what does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis? And what type of projects do you actually manage?
Yeah. So I've managed from very small projects with no budget, projects with, let's say, about 50,000 euros budget, to $1 million projects with a very huge budget. So small satellites, big satellites, type launch projects, satellite launch projects. What else? Software development, flight software for satellites development, mobility softwares or mobile applications. I could go
Everything.
like hours and hours talking about all the projects that I've managed so far.
Okay, I think that's something that we can probably dive into a bit later. But
Yeah.
also to touch upon something else you're doing, you're also the national point of contact for Angola for the Space Generation Advisory Council. How did you get involved with the SGAC, and what made you want to become the national point of contact?
Yeah, so I had been following SJC for quite some time, and I just didn't have really the time to like get highly involved. But by the time I was doing my master's, I had a lot of colleagues that were already part of the SJC. So I started attending some webinars, and then during the pandemic, we didn't know what to do. So then there were these webinars from SJC, and I was like attending most of these webinars. So I decided, wow, it's a very good community at SJC of people working in the space sector. By the way, then I was also getting involved with the Moon Village Association, which Mohatas is the original coordinator. So I signed up. I signed up to be a member, and then after some time, I saw that there was an open position for a national point of contact for Angola, and I applied for that.
Okay. So and this is why you're still working as well. So you're working as a project manager, and now you're also the national point of contact at the same time.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Is there anything we missed in this, or is there anything else you're doing that you want to talk about?
So yeah, project management, and now I decided, hey, so I've been 7 years in the space industry. I've been doing a lot of different stuff. So now I understand about business development, managing business development, because like there's a lot of cool technology being developed now in the industry. But then how do you market this technology? How do you sell it? Where do you find a market for it? So then I started doing business development, which is something that I totally love now. But it's connected to project management, because when you're doing business development, you have projects that you're managing. And it's something that I love, because so my focus at the moment is because I work for Satellogic, and my focus for the moment is giving people access to Earth observation data, optical images. And this is it's a wonderful work, because so many things can be done with information that is extracted from satellite images, for agriculture, for security reasons, for urban development, for disaster management response. So it's really amazing, especially being able to outreach to institutions in Africa, in the Middle East as well, to give them access to this valuable data.
So when we talk about Earth observation data, so that's essentially satellites in orbit. They have some kind of camera, some kind of optical payload, and they look at the Earth and send some data back. But how to a regular person, like, how is that useful? What is the actual process of extracting information from images taken from space, and how can that actually be used on a real day-to-day level?
Yeah, so the first thing that I can give you, one huge market is the agri-insurance market. So let's say you are a bank in Africa and you want to give loans to farmers, right? So what happens is, if a bank gives out a loan to a farmer, they need to check if the farmer is using that money, if the farmer is really putting that money into production of food, as they say when they got the loan. And then let's take it a little bit further. Let's say you are an insurance company, and someone, like, I'm a farmer, I come to you and I insure my farm, right? It will take you so much effort. You will probably have to send someone to my farm. That costs time and money, to get information, to see if I'm really producing, if something wrong happened. With these images, the information that people can extract, first of all, is see how productive your farm is. And it goes deeper. Actually, you can see when to water your plants, which is very, very exciting. Imagine, and this is happening already, for example, in Kenya, not only in Kenya, but all over, in many countries, telling, farmers, they get a message on their phone, time to water your plants. This is based on the information that people are extracting from satellite data. This is very, very exciting. Let's say there's illegal fishing in some area, and with satellite images, we can actually detect that and send information to the authorities, which is also something very important.
So you can essentially use satellite data either through the images themselves, which just show you, okay, there's some illegal mining going over in this region of the country, or you can run some analysis on the data you get back and get more information out of it that then gives you, okay, that's very interesting.
Because you have a satellite image, you have different frequency bands, and depending on the frequency band that you are using, you can extract different type of information. That will take some more time, but then the added value is high. So you have a specific type of people that perform these types of analytics. They extract way more information than me or you. We would just look at an image. Okay, what can we see? Let's say we are trying to do urban development analysis. So if I show you an image, it might take you some time to count how many houses are on that image, but you can see, okay, there's houses in this location, there's no houses in this other location. But if you perform a deeper analytics, you can know how many houses are in there, how big are these houses, sometimes you might even know how old these houses are, So this is the type of analytics, and it's very valuable information.
And I think the cool part about all of this is that it's still a very young field that is coming up right now, especially with the use of CubeSats to try and revolutionize the way we can look at the Earth and what we can do with it. So it's quite exciting. I mean, for you looking forward, do you have plans to come back to Africa to try and use your knowledge within Africa itself, or what are you sort of looking forward to in the coming future for your own career?
Definitely, definitely. Not only coming back, so it's like I never left Africa because I work with Africans the whole time. I work with Tensai, I work with Nelly. We can go the whole day talking about all the people that we are working and doing a lot of exciting stuff. You know, so many exciting projects happening at this time, and also space education is one of the things. And not only that, participating in this types of your webinar, I think is also being very much connected to Africa and all the people that are trying to work in the space sector.
Awesome. And so, I mean, you mentioned, well, speaking of the fact that you mentioned Moon Village Association, I think it's a good time to switch over to Moataz. Moataz, how did you get involved in space? I mean, was this also something that you were thinking about when you were young, or did you come about it later? I mean, I know Egypt has been involved with the space industry for longer than a lot of other African countries. Did you already have an awareness of the space industry before you got involved?
Yeah, so it's a big question. Let me break that down a little bit. So Egypt has had some investment in space infrastructure all the way back in the 60s. The programs that were existent then, largely they have not really matured. After a couple of years, you know, the economy and a lot of political instability led to them being pushed aside. I grew up in Alexandria. Alexandria is the second largest city in Egypt. And in my network and with everybody that I've engaged with, I never really heard about space. And there were zero careers in space industry that I was aware of. I was, however, always interested in the aerospace industry in general, so with space as a subset. And I've looked for education, and I was also interested in working in the business side of aerospace, not just as an engineer. I was not really seeing myself as somebody with a strong technical acumen, but I knew that I need to study aerospace engineering before I get into aerospace business. So I looked for universities in Egypt that have aerospace curriculum, and I applied abroad. And I used to have British education, so I took a lot of extra courses to travel. And at first, I was not successful actually in traveling. And I remember not being accepted in several universities because even the process of application is its own game. I was not too familiar with it. So I went and I started studying mechanical engineering for a year at the American University in Cairo. And I spent there a year, and I was not really fully satisfied because I was not pursuing the goal that I set for myself. So I want to go back a step and say that for you to work in space and have African origins, you need to know who you are and what you love, and you need to think big and have a long-term strategy, but you also need to be lucky and to work a lot. You know, so there is not an easy answer, and I don't like selling dreams to people. I prefer being realistic. You know, you need all four. You need planning and knowing who you are, and being lucky and working a lot of hours. So at first, what I did, I said, okay, my first step is going to be aerospace education, and I got accepted in Rutgers in the US. So I transferred and I stopped studying mechanical engineering and went into the aerospace world. Now, when you take a step forward in your path, you start learning more. And that's what happened with me. So I wanted to eventually work specifically in the space industry. And I started taking courses that are not aerospace focused, that are space focused. My program was blended. After I graduated, I got a job as a systems engineer, which is not really what I was hoping for in terms of not really where I see myself, you know, being passionate about going to work every day. And it was in aircraft. It was with contracts in a private company that works a lot with the U.S. government, the FAA specifically. So helping them with air traffic control. And I spent a year there. And during that period, I was learning, but I was also not comfortable with where I'm headed. But it was a step forward after all. So you don't always get what you want right away. Sometimes you just need to go in the direction and later your path will become clear.
Right.
So during that process, yeah, I did my master's in business administration and starting gradually going into space and started also working in the business development and sales in the space industry, which is what I've been doing for a few years now.
To pull it back a little bit, because so I mean, for you, you had a bit of a vision of what you wanted to do, even at a seemingly young age. How easy was that to communicate that to your parents or or to your friends who may have not even understood what the space industry was? Did a lot of people just think you were crazy, or
Yeah, after, I mean, you can't live after what people tell you to live with. And with my family and everybody that I know, yes, I had these crazy looks. I had those who were questioning me a lot, and still they do. I mean, they do less so right now, but still, the average person who I talk to might think that I'm somewhat out of this world or crazy or whatever word they choose. But I'm gonna say this, and I'm a firm believer of it. You live your life, right? And you're only gonna live it one time, and your life needs to have a meaning, and you need to really go after what you believe in, and at least try. So it's you don't really lose much. There are some risks, and I had to pay some prices in different ways, spending several years outside of my origin, losing a lot of my friends, traveling and all of that. But you need to go after what you're passionate about. And even if it's challenging, that means you need to put in more work to succeed. Sometimes you fail, and sometimes you need to accept failure. It just depends on the element of luck. I did not remove luck from the equation because it's one of the four things that you actually need to be able to get to where you want to do. Does that answer your question?
yeah, for sure. But so I mean, you really have a real deep passion then for space itself. What is it really about space or aerospace that gives you this passion that makes you so interested in it?
If we look at our countries, if we look at our continent, and it might be unfair to look at a continent at large with dozens of countries, but if you just each one of us look at our country, you would see that it comes down to the topic of technology. A country without advanced technology will not have a strong economy, will not be able to have enough influence and independence, and will not be able, to care for itself. It will always be importing foreign technology. So that is something that I understood at a young age, and I understood that when it comes to technology, there's a lot of areas. I was just driven into aerospace. It was asking, for my attention without me even perhaps in the movies and stuff that I watched when I was young. But I don't think it's that simple. So aerospace got my attention, and I always wanted to work in advanced technology and help in some capacity to improve the status in my home country and in the region. So it is part of my passion, not to work in space. I don't really feel, and I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I don't even want to go to space. I don't want to go to the moon or to Mars. Space to me is technology, and that's all what it is. It's technology that you need. It's a technology that will help improve, living standards, and it has a lot of benefits. So we need to do it.
I mean, I think that's something, at least me personally, I can relate with a lot. For me, that's also kind of the idea behind Space Hubs Africa, or like how I even came up with Space Hubs Africa is I really see these emerging technologies. So artificial intelligence, space technologies, these are really ways that Africans can use to really push forward development on the socioeconomic side, sustainable development, and really advance the countries and advance our continent much faster and much more quickly than anything else. And for me, that's also what attracted me personally, was that, okay, we have these emerging technologies that nobody really is using, that if we learn how to use effectively, we can really change the current situation within Africa. And so I think that's something that I think also resonates with people in our audience, and might also resonate with both Eldridge, Tensai, and Nelly as well. So it's very interesting to hear that that's really what drives you as well.
Yeah, and I salute you for that. If you don't mind, I want to say one small thing. Um, to some extent, you need to be crazy if you want to work in space industry in Africa. Let's be honest, okay? But it's not the kind of crazy that's bad. It's the kind of crazy where you are taking a large risk, and you're thinking very long term, and you need to be patient and persistent. So I would not actually advocate for everybody to try to get into the space industry. You need to look at the resources and access you have, and you need to really ask yourself, do you want to take that path and are you committed to it? And a lot of people are going to say yes. And those are the people who I would say 100% go ahead and take that risk, and you will get there by time.
Yeah. And I mean, that's also what these webinars are for, right? We're trying to give an insight into what is the actual path in the industry, what does it look like, and what are some of the challenges that you might face along your way. Anything you do in life will be difficult, and you need to persevere if you really want to become successful. But I think by looking at, people who've gone before you, people who've done it and become successful, that can be an inspiration as well for people who may be on the fence or who may not know exactly what to do. So bringing it back to your experience, you said you started off with systems engineering. Can you give a brief explanation of what that actually is and what that looks like?
Yes. So any large system, whether it's a spacecraft, whether it's air traffic control, it constitutes of multiple systems. And at university, most of the majors is just to study one or two or a couple of systems. But there's also the area of studying how systems work with each other. Your iPhone or your mobile that everybody has access to. There are so many things interconnected, and their performance impacts each other. So my job as a systems engineer was to study how some systems communicate with each other and how that impacts a certain problem or a certain set of requirements. And it's a very interesting career path. It was just not for me, but I learned quite a lot from it. And after that, I transitioned into sales. I was account manager, and I was doing a lot of business development and international and commercial sales with AI Solutions. And AI Solutions is a US leader in ground systems, and specifically the flight dynamics systems. They have a powerful software called FreeFlyer that does space mission design, analysis, and operations. And I spent a couple of years working promoting the university program to a lot of universities and students globally, which is free, and also working with different companies, large and established ones, and space agencies on their flight dynamics needs. So I was doing that with a sales background, with a sales hat. So I was doing a lot of education and introductions and coordination and communication, and I was working with several technical teams. So that was interesting because I got to learn about so many applications in the space industry. And I was not just focused on one big problem as much as I was doing something similar, but with different companies. So I was getting a lot of general insights and information. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I recently joined Leo Labs. And I saw that I was at AI Solutions. I was happy with what I was doing, and I was generally going into a direction that I was pleased with. At Leo Labs, it's a company that I've been tracking it for a couple of years. It's very successful, and the culture they have, and the potential for growth, and their mission as a company to guarantee safe and sustainable operations in low Earth orbit by providing a lot of measurements, tracking everything in orbit, and providing services using this tracking data, and having a dedicated global radar network to enable that. So the company really bonded with me in terms of, it just drove my attention significantly. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm managing the commercial sales and working on creating new products, new services, and scaling up a lot of data-driven services that we have developed. And it's quite interesting. But at the same time, while I'm doing all of that for almost 2 years now, I started connecting and growing a network. Something that I've noticed is I've went to a lot of conferences, professional industry conferences, and I've not seen many Egyptians, Arabs, or Africans there. And I was, to some extent, disappointed. But I mean, it's fair, right? You don't have advanced space economies there. So I started just keeping track of my contacts and just started, looking at if I get to see somebody who we have a connection where we are from, then I'll just, keep that connection. And 2 years ago, I started, consolidating that. So what I'm trying to work on, and what I've been working on with the Egyptian Space Agency, with the Moon Village Association, and with other things as well, is trying to build a community of people in the space industry, because you cannot do anything on your own. So my mindset is split in two. One of them is caring for my career, so you need to advance in your career, and you need to really put your passion behind it and be successful. But the other side of how I spend my time is to try to create initiatives that will have long-term impact on society in general and on the industry in your nation, your continent, and elsewhere. So that is what I do with with the Moon Village Association, with the Egyptian Space Agency, and my job at Leo Labs. I just go ahead and try to grow the business that I'm focused on, and to also establish deeper roots in the industry and gain more understanding. Space is hard, and space is hard because it has a lot of details. You need a lot of experience and exposure, and a lot of hours. You don't just walk in and do business in space. It's not like that. It's rich in detail. So while I'm developing myself, I'm growing the company that I'm in, and also trying to contribute to society with the Moon Village Association and other organizations. If you don't mind, I would say I don't really like to put a word out there for an organization like MVA, SGSC, X, Y, and Z. It's more of a concept of creating a community and having people in that community representing these organizations working with each other. So my recommendation to anybody watching this is there are a lot of efforts, and I salute you for arranging this webinar and other activities for trying to help create these communities. And there are other initiatives similar to that. For everybody who's watching, the first realistic step for you is to start not just attending these events, but volunteering your time to participate in coordinating them, to participate in, just having access, because access will provide you information, and that information will enable you to draw your career and start having better steps while planning. Yeah, so that is in a brief, what I'm working on. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was really great. Just to bring it back quickly, I had a few questions. So I mean, you spoke a lot about being involved in sales. What does that actually look like within the space industry specifically?
Okay, so what I do is a lot of communication and education, and also problem solving for companies. So what I do is basically I have a set of products that I'm focused on, and I know their advantages. I know what they bring. I know what problems they solve, and a lot of companies don't know about them. So I first of all educate them. I reach out and I educate them on that. Then they go ahead and they start, getting familiarity, and they explore some use cases for their tasks. And every company has different requirements. A constellation of 5,000 spacecraft is very, very different from a constellation of 20 spacecraft at a different altitude. And each one of them has set of requirements. A government has requirements different than commercial companies, and there are so many different applications. So when I present the services and do that education, they usually come back with a set of questions, and there are going to be a lot of communication back and forth for several weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years. And I do that for several companies and institutions in parallel. So that is in a brief. And then there are also areas where we get feedback and we identify new problems in the industry. There's, for example, a problem where you don't have an easy way to communicate and coordinate between spacecraft operators. It's a very manual, tedious process. Everybody complains from it. So how can we make that better? So not just educating your customers and troubleshooting what they are working on and trying to find the best tailored solution for them, but also doing gap analysis on the market and what you need to develop to have more services and to enable better flow in the space industry. So these are the three things in general that I'm focused on. There's a lot of communication. You end up wearing too many hats, and you end up writing a lot of emails and being a lot of meetings. But it's something that I find myself interested and passionate about. As I said, you need to know yourself and what you're good at. Not everybody is going to be the smartest engineer or a really successful engineer working on camera systems. Not everybody is going to work in management or in software. You need some salespeople and people who do communication, coordination, and strategy work. So that is what I'm primarily focused on.
Okay, and then you also mentioned that you were doing a lot of work with the Egyptian Space Agency and also the Moon Village Association. What was your motivation behind that, and what exactly do you do for those two organizations?
Okay, so back to the point that I said about creating a community. I don't really care about names as much as I care about a cause. So the cause is how can we create a sustainable community in Egypt that would be able to unite, inspire, and involve all of the young professionals and catalyze, the progress being done in the space industry. That is something that every country needs. So for you to do that, you need to create, that community. You need to inspire them, and you need to have them involved in tasks. And these tasks have to have long-term and short-term benefits. So that is what is needed. Now, the opportunity came with the formation of the Moon Village Association. And I know Egypt has been recently very interested in being more active in the space industry, and they're hosting the African Space um, the African
Agency,
agency, yes, and they're doing a lot of work in that path. So there is interest, and at the same time, the Moon Village Association is trying to grow internationally and gain momentum with the Moon Rush and a lot of these activities. And everybody really feels excited and passionate about the moon. I mean, just imagine being able to be part of a project that helps, that ends up going there. It is something that everybody has, I think, would be interested in. So what I started working with the Egyptian Space Agency on is trying to unite those in my network and in theirs, some young professionals. Right now, we have more than 30 young space professionals, some of them in industry abroad, some of them are studying in different universities in Egypt and elsewhere. And what's common with all of them is they all actually care about space and want to be part of it or are already part of it. And then we started working on a roadmap for how Egypt can contribute to the lunar economy. And that roadmap is not just how can we get to the moon, as much as how can we build a sustainable industry and activities that would enable us to go to the moon, but also have a mature space industry. So I would not say it's as big as a national strategy, but it's what a group of what a group of young professionals can do to assist, with the community making and setting a plan instead of having individual distracted efforts. So our group, we started with 5, 10 people, and now we are reached 30 after we've been working for more than a year. Actually, we're going to be celebrating our 1 year anniversary in a couple of weeks. I hope you all attend that session. And we've broken ourselves into several teams. So we have a scientific team, we have a technical team, we have a marketing and outreach team, we have one that does events, and we have the one that creates education programs. And we also have those who are managing all of that. So all of that organization, and each team has a different set of goals and they coordinate with each other. And there's also those who manage coordination between the space agency itself and that group of young professionals. And we set up our roadmap early on, and then we looked how can we implement it. So we created these different verticals, and we are trying to create events to engage the community. We're trying to improve existing space educational programs using very, very small things, but they are incremental improvements. We're trying to do some marketing for ourselves and space in Egypt in general. So the marketing and outreach team actually supports the other teams in different ways. We have a technical team because whatever we do, it has to have some technology in it. We're not just going to be creating events. We are actually, having a large people just studying subsystems and how they perform in lunar environment and studying the mission profile and what you can do to get there and how can you develop some of these technologies. We have a whole team studying the payload. So are we going to go to the moon or not? Why would we do that? What are the benefits? What are the requirements? That is a big area. And we have some brilliant young professionals, scientists, engineers, people who are working in different fields. And this, I see it as a seed. So it's not just about the MVA. Now we have a group of people that knows each other and that are organically growing. In a year, in a couple of years, that group of people will start growing, and they are organizing SG Egypt. So the same group is not just working with an MVA. They are doing SG Egypt in a couple of days, actually, and they are engaged in other activities with other organizations. So we are seeing that Egyptian Space Society starting to become true, and it will be a lasting thing. And that will be the core that will engage with the youth, and the youth will be able to explore opportunities and get with the Egyptian Space Agency or other companies that are growing in this domain. So that is the direction that that is the opportunity. And a lot of people understand that. And a lot of people are believing of that. And everybody just helps with whatever they can. It is very time consuming, I must say, but it's interesting and it's fun. And it's something that will not just have short term benefits, but long term as well, I hope. Let's see how it goes.
I can definitely see how you're in sales. I mean, you're very good at showing your passion and really explaining like why it's important and really building communities. And I mean, it's very impressive the things that you're doing. And of course, we also want to help continue to build communities at Space Hubs Africa. So anytime you need any kind of support, promotion, or anything like that, we're also happy to connect with you and bring more visibility to the work you're doing, because it's very important, I think, for other Africans to see that these things are happening already and that they are possible. So, I mean, great work for that's all I can say.
I'll take you up on that, and it's not great work for me as much as the team that we have.
For
You know,
sure.
as I'm, nobody will be able to do anything in the space industry by themselves. You need a large coordinated team. So, it's there's a lot of great people in this continent, in our countries, and we just need to connect them with each other and provide the platform for them to do something. So I will take you up on that promise, and I'll follow up with you on how we can take some more steps.
Great. And I mean, speaking of communities as well, Tensai, you are also or have been involved with a lot of communities within Ethiopia. So both the Ethiopian Space Science Society and now also the SJAC, working as the national point of contact. Um, Similar question. Did you always know about space growing up? Were you always interested in space growing up? How did you actually get involved in the space industry? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a bit quiet, so if you can bring the mic as close as
Okay.
possible, then that'll be great.
How about now?
Yeah, sounds good.
Alright. Okay. So yeah. First off, again, thank you very much for today. It's such a good inspiration for me as well, because I find myself pretty much yet to reach what Eldridge and Motaz have reached right now. And yeah, so thank you everyone. But okay, for my case, I think I would say it's a bit different, because I started, you know, come one, I started joining the Space Endeavor with history. I know it
Okay.
might sound weird, but yeah. So the thing is, like, uh, one of the things that I personally think I am is I like to tap in on niche subjects. Things that are not, very not popular yet. The odd things, I guess that's what I am. And yeah, so while I was pretty much fascinated with the history that we have as a country, there were lots of things that were written back in, back in the days, like before Christ, ancient history books and things like that. And fortunate for us, we had lots of I wouldn't call them with that they would meet, the standards that we have now within research and stuff, but there were lots of observations that were being done, like in space, and a lot of somehow, even though they might seem mythological, but there were Ethiopian kings that named stars and things like that. So that was, a paradigm shifting point for me, because those were the things that inspired initially. And later on, I figured out for myself that those history, yes, of course, they're really good, but yet, that wouldn't add up to what we are doing right now, right? And I think I was like an eighth grader or something. I first joined the Ethiopian Space Science Society. They had their general assembly at the university, and it was fascinating since then. And the next time they had an event, I had a presentation about, you know, my readings about this ancient Ethiopian astronomy and things like that. And with that, I started to get involved with, the astronomy and astrophysics. And I started doing outreach with the team out in the Ethiopian Space Science Society and that. And I actually had a good connection, because I was still a high school student by then, and I could easily connect with other high school students easily than, other doctors and professors, doing the lectures. And I did a couple of weekend classes and things like that. And it went on like that since until I joined the university. But when I got to join university, I didn't want to stick, to the science part, because I've been wanting to join the engineering sector for a very, very long time. And the next thing I would love than engineering would be medicine. And for me, trying to see it feasible, if I would join physics, for example, that would be the first thing that would be accessible in Ethiopia. uh, that would be a stepping point for me to astrophysics. If I do engineering, I could do aerospace engineering. But if I did medicine, I didn't see the feasibility, especially even now, that I would join the space medicine, endeavors and research things like that. So yeah, so with that, I joined with doing mechanical engineering. Assuming that it'd be much closer for me and easier for me to do aerospace engineering later in the future. Yeah, so that was how the career was built. But in regards to SGAC, I actually got to be part of it when I was 16. And SJC basically doesn't want members beneath 18. And I think I think I have to say this out loud. I think I changed my birth date or something when I first opened my account, and I applied for multiple conferences. I actually had somehow a pretty good, I'd say, track of record, and I actually got accepted for a delegate position in that. And I emailed the executive director back then. It was Andrea Jamie, if not mistaken, and she told me that I should apply for scholarships. And I told her, I'm just 16, I don't have money, and my parents even wouldn't let me go. And she was like, "What? Wait, like how old are you again?" And I was like 16. Oh, sorry, you have to come back when you're 18. We can't process you. Like, we can't have you here. And I was like, okay, but like somehow she approached me in a very good way, and kept on putting the links with SJC. And nevertheless, whenever the national point of contacts for Ethiopia organized an event in Ethiopia, like in Addis or wherever, uh, I would always be there to support, help in organizing things like that. So later on, that grew to hosting the African Space Generation Workshop. By then, I was not an NPOC. I was literally no one in SJAC, just knew a few people there. And we submitted the bid to host the workshop in Addis. And that was, I would say, the liftoff of my connection with SJC. In 2 months, I got to be an NPOC right after the event ended. No, not an NPOC. I joined the events coordination team right after the workshop. Then in February, I got to be an NPOC, and yeah, so things like that.
That's, I mean, so you also are quite passionate about space. I mean, similar to Muataz, and I mean, almost even more if you're already at 16, trying to join organizations almost illegally and doing everything you can to be a part of it. And that's pretty inspiring. And I mean, I think the history angle is actually quite interesting because, when we talk about Africa not being part of the space industry, we're really talking about modern ages because a lot of astronomy
Yeah.
comes from Africa, and we've been looking at the stars and plotting the stars for a long time, and that kind of history is not really looked at as much these days, or at least forgotten. So actually, it'd be interesting if you currently can think of it. But what was some of the interesting history that you learned while you were doing your research?
Okay, so thing is, fortunate for me, I had the opportunity to learn Giz, which is a very ancient language in Ethiopia, and a lot of manuscripts were written and things like that. So whenever I got the opportunity to these very old manuscripts, the, the most things that were always fantasizing me were the way they understood the astronomy back then, and the recent way we define we would redefine, or the terminologies that we use and things like that. For example, a modern person, a person in the modern science, for example, can simply ask, how do we not get to have eclipses every month, for example? Because, the moon was supposed to rotate just in front of us every time, right? But the way it defines it on the manuscript is pretty much the same, but in a, you know, somehow an old slang, I would say. and I would always be shook to see, okay, these people knew this, but they didn't state it in a way that for example, NASA is saying it on the website. It's just it's like the house is like 10 miles from here, and I'm saying it's like 10 kilometers. It's different measurements. You might not, understand each other. Like if you don't get to know how to convert those, but there's somehow similar history and things like that. And even even not just back in the ancient times, I actually had the opportunity to see the first observatory of Ethiopia, uh, which was back in the last emperor that we had. It was pretty decent, and it feels really nice that a lot of people, uh, foreigners, scholars, and even Ethiopians were collaboratively doing, uh, marvelous observational research and publishing, to world-leading journals like Nature, and yeah, things like that fascinated me a lot. And the question I had next was, how can I add up onto this, right? So shedding some light on what we already have is pretty much a really good thing, because most of the things that I usually, for example, I personally face, even within my family, would be like, okay, you're talking about the stars, spacecraft, things and like that. Like, what are they actually benefiting us right now? And a lot of people do neglect the benefits that we are having from out of space technology. Call it is either a space driven technology or a direct space technology that we're applying, including this conference that we are having right now. So yeah, things like that.
So, I mean, were you the only one in your family who was really interested in all of this, or did you inherit this interest from someone in your family?
I think I'm the only one, I'd say. Uh, we're just two, for example, in my family. My older sister is a doctor, and she would be like, "Okay, whatever, do your thing as long as you feel happy with it." So
That's awesome, and I mean, it's also cool that you had access to the Ethiopian Space Science Society. Do you want to talk a bit more about what they do and how exactly they operate?
okay, so the Ethiopian Space Science Society, established in back in 2005. It was initially established to mobilize the youth all over Ethiopia, so that they would have the initial target was to create awareness of how what I just said, the benefits of space science and space technology to our day-to-day lives. And the best part of this society establishment was, it was not it was not just few people, random people just in business, or living their daily lives and stuff like that, but we actually had the deputy prime minister and attorney general and businessman, in fact, the Ethiopia's richest person, and other scientists grouped together to form this society. That means they actually had the upper hand of changing, whatever they wanted in terms of policy, economy, and even the science sector, or the academia, right? So that's how it started, with like 44 members or so. It was pretty much small, but right now we have more than 10,000 members all over Ethiopia.
Wow.
It has um, different branches, like in different universities as a host and institution. And in fact, I have been leading one of the branch offices in Mekelle, which my university resides. And I was back then the vice chairman for the society, for the branch society we had there. And yeah, so the headquarters is based in Addis. They do a lot of outreach activities, collaborate with international organizations to have public lectures and things like that. We actually had, for example, Charles Bolden in Addis. Whenever he came to Addis, we always host them a public lecture. I think I met him twice, for example. And whenever, for example, an astronaut comes to Addis with through the U.S. embassy or something, we do get the connections and bring him up to uh, you know the youth, so that they can get inspired. So right now we don't, we so far we're not giving hardcore engineering or science courses and things like that. Of course, we do some basic and somehow a little bit advanced, but intermediary amount of knowledge transfer programs that we have. But because most of the works that we do is in volunteering, there's not that much. But regardless, I believe we were able to create a very huge impact because, of course, there were some little bit of struggles, like things that were being initiated back in the days, but within the recent decade or so, that was how it started. And uh, establishment in 2005, within I think 6 years, I would say, we had the opportunity to build East Africa's biggest observatory. We built two twin telescopes at Mount Ntoto, and we had the opportunity to be a hub for observations, as it was close to the city, and it didn't, scientists didn't have to go to, too far to get an observatory when they arrive in Addis Ababa. Yeah, so we got to do that, and 2015 we had the establishment of the Ethiopian Space Science and Technology Council, which was led by the Prime Minister and people we had from the Ethiopian Space Science Society, and with that council overseen by the Prime Minister office, uh, which is somehow under the Minister Office of the Space Science and Technology, the Science and Technology Ministry. We established the Ethiopian Space Science and Technology Institute, which is currently, I would say, the space agency for Ethiopia for so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
So
mean, for yourself, looking forward, what are sort of your plans within the industry? Do you have any like clear plans of what you want to do, or are you still trying to figure it out right now?
Um, so the thing is, I would say I'm still figuring it out, like in a broad way. But the way when I say that I'm figuring it out is not that I don't know what to do next, but what is going to be the bigger picture of the Ethiopian space science sector in the coming 10 or 15 years, right? So,
Right.
and what would be my contribution to it? Because sometimes for example, it's easy, for example, to sell something when it's already in demand. But right now, I would say we need that market activation kind of scheme so that people would actually do need to, so that they would get into the sector. For example, back when I joined first, I thought I had to be a physicist or an astrophysicist to be called a space science person, right? And space science just would be a very narrow subject for me. But later on, when I explored the opportunities out in the world, it is actually something that can take in literally any discipline, right? Because if you bring a lawyer, they can be a space lawyer. If you bring a person in the health sector, they can be working in the space medicine sector, like businessmen, things like that, engineers. Literally, whoever is, let's see, Eldridge, he's a project management person, and he's now managing projects of space, right? So it, 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 space and arts, they're like, they can be everywhere, right? So I'm currently, so the first thing that I'm planning to do right now is develop myself. I don't want to be that person that just talks here and there but doesn't really know what really goes down on the ground. So I personally, I still haven't graduated my first degree, so hopefully I get to do it this year. Um, then my personal plans would be developing my academia skills and pushing in that sector, but eventually, so that we could get on to, or like get to drink the milk of the space sector, would be uh, joining the industry. And by industry, I mean not existing industry. For example, I hope this video doesn't get to reach NASA, but I never dreamed of joining them. For example, it's not from the sake of, or like in the sense of uh, undermining or in that sense, but my plans have always been, how would we do what others do, where we are at, right? I think that that should be, or how could we do it better, even
Yeah.
the better sense. So I don't dream of joining SpaceX or NASA for the sake of just doing work there. We
Yeah.
have to, we ought to be a lifelong learner so that we can implement things back to our lives and our community, because that's the community that brought us up to where we are right now. And yeah, so plans
Yeah.
that I have right now is develop myself, and I don't want the coming generation to struggle and having problems with space disciplines not being available in the country. So I've some initial plans that working on currently, and having like aerospace engineering program, for example, in Ethiopia, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really admirable, and I think that's something also shared by the other guests here. So Eldridge and Mu'taz have both talked about that really, which is having a long term vision. One, focusing on yourself to actually develop your own skills. So doing the work to actually learn and build the skills necessary for the industry. And then three, also trying to really focus on Africa to really use the technology and use these developments for the development of Africa. And I think that's really a great vision you have, and a great plan that you've already set up for yourself. So just looking at the time as well, because I don't want to take up all of your Saturday. I want you guys to enjoy the nice day out as well. We've already reached an hour and 15 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll switch quickly to the panel discussion portion of this, where I'll just ask you guys one or two questions, and then I think we can wrap it up. But going back to you, Eldridge, and thinking about the skills that are necessary within the industry, since you've done quite a lot of different work as a project manager and worked in a lot of different projects, from your perspective, what are some of the key skills that you think were the level that actually pushed you forward and allowed you to be as successful as you are?
That's a little bit tricky, because I don't want to mislead people. So I'll say, to quickly answer your question, we need to understand that now space is being democratized. So back in 65 years ago, when humans started exploring space, space exploration was mostly for it was based on defense, for defense reasons, security reasons, right? And you had the United States of America and Russia, Soviet Union at the time. And then as things started progressing, it became more of a thing for countries that can develop the technology, and it was very engineer based. So right now, as space is being democratized, you need different types of backgrounds. So you don't just need engineers. That's why you have people like me, people like Mu'taz doing the work that we do, because you can develop the most amazing technology in the world. But if you cannot, at this time, since we are in the commercialization phase era of the space industry, if you cannot sell it, if you cannot find use cases for it, if you cannot find the need for this technology, it's basically useless, because then you cannot fund for further development, you cannot fund for growth. And this is just to tell you that you need now different skill sets. This then leads me to the advice that I want to give. Focus at what you want to do in the space industry. What are you good at? What do you love doing? Because as Mu'taz said, and I agree, you are going to have to work hard, especially if you are in Africa. You are going to have to work very hard. And I agree again with Mu'taz, you will need luck. And for me, luck means two things: hard work, which is preparation, and opportunity. So you need to work very hard, and you need to find an opportunity. And to find opportunities, you need to work hard, expose yourself, participate in events, try to join communities, try to be a volunteer in different projects. So many things happening. Be a volunteer, show up. Hey, how can I help? Let me write something. Let me be an events organizer, for example. There's so many things that you need to do. But this builds up to how you are going to be successful. And not to extend too much and not to monopolize this question, but you'll see I'm wearing a Barcelona t-shirt because not only because I'm a fan, but because in my space career, not only in my space career, but in my professional career in general, I like to think to take inspiration from not only musicians but from people in the sports world. Why? Because these people, if you look, like let's say for example Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi, if you look at the story, how these guys prepare, how these guys work hard. Even if we go to basketball, let's talk about Michael Jordan, who is one of the greatest, or if not the greatest, basketball player of all time. If you see how these guys' mindsets are wired, how they prepare, how they work hard, and how they look for opportunities to be lucky, you apply this in your own professional career. This is what I try to do. So I wouldn't tell people, hey, to be successful, you need to be a business developer, you need to be an engineer, or you need to be a satellite operator. Look at what you're good at, what you love doing, and where's your passion, because that's going to be your only motivation. Like Moata said, some people are going to say you're crazy because you're chasing something that might not be worth it, especially if some countries in Africa, they don't even have a space program. They don't even have investments in space, but you have very talented people who are trying to develop things, on their own. And this is based on passion. And this is people who have it in them to be successful. So again, my advice is think what you want to do. There's many different careers inside the space industry, but pick what you love and be prepared to work hard.
Yeah, I saw your Barcelona's T-shirt, and I was gonna make a comment because I'm a Chelsea fan, so we have our little Champions League battles back and forth. But I'll let that slide for now. a different conversation.
Yeah, let's have a different session for this.
Exactly. And I mean, so speaking to you, Moataz, where I mean, you've also talked a lot about there is no one skill necessary. You need to work hard. I was just thinking, like, what were some of the challenges that you faced within Egypt that you had to work at? Because I think it might be interesting for our audience to know, what the challenges they might be able to face and what how they might be able to tackle it themselves. So I was just wondering if you had examples within your work within Egypt of a challenge that you faced that you had to overcome and what you did to overcome that challenge.
Oh, you keep shooting some big questions. I don't know.
Take your time to think if you need it.
I have like 60 seconds to answer.
No, take your time. Take your time.
My words gonna fall apart if I don't. Let me say one thing. The challenges are many, and every country has its own set of problems and restrictions. And I mean, I've seen people who are very successful, but their biggest challenge is getting that visa. I've seen others who the challenges being getting into the program that they want to study. Some challenges are in just being efficient. Maybe you are actually working in something you're passionate about, but progress and funding is not enough. Progress is too slow. There are so many challenges. So, you're all gonna be surprised by what you're gonna see, and just be ready for it. Now, the one thing I would say is being practical. We need people to think more practical. It's okay to have a big dream. It's okay to be crazy, but if you're doing that and if you're not being practical and if you're not having your backup scenarios, then you're really playing with fire and it might burn you. So, you can say, one can argue, I want to work in, I'm passionate about nuclear engineering and I'm passionate about space. So I'm in Africa. Let me get into the area of, propulsion using nuclear energy, which is something evolving in the industry, but it's also something that's not been proven. It's very expensive. Only two countries are working seriously on it, and it's very, very long term. So if you're in Africa and that is your passion and you want to go after that, you're putting for yourself many, many more barriers. So by being practical, I would say, well, say at least I want to be an engineer, right? I mean, yes, space is for everybody. Space has so many different careers, but the overwhelming majority is engineering based. So if you're taking something niche and you're already coming from a country in Africa that doesn't have a space program, then you're making it harder and harder and harder for yourself. So my opinion is, yes, it's your right to dream and to do everything that you want, but be practical about what you're doing and just try to increase the probability of success by taking a venue, that would, be more likely for you to be able to find a good job in your country or in a nearby country, or at least find a good job abroad and be able to come back and work something similar in that domain. So that is, and have a plan B, because not everybody is going to be successful at once. And you need to I mean, you can go ahead and do all kinds of events and all of that and be in the space industry, but you've not really found a job yet that is, on space technology. So are you going to continue doing all of that, or when is the time where you're going to say, okay, maybe I need to start building on an alternative career, and later I can do that transition? It is okay to take some zigzags, be persistent, but at the same time, keep your eyes open for your surrounding and what is going on. And I mean, they are contradictory. There are no easy answers, and that is the problem. It's not like somebody's gonna come here and watch us for 5, 10 minutes and come out. Oh, this is exactly what I need to do. You just need to be prepared and be flexible. Yes, have a plan, but at the same time, have a plan for your plan's failure. Work as hard as you can, but be ready and prepared for failure as well. And just being able to balance between refusing to give up and also working on your backup, I think is good. Otherwise, I mean, you only live one time, so go after your dreams, but at the same time, don't lose your life for that.
Definitely.
Just have something.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah, and it seems that it's really about like you have to learn how to focus on yourself and understand what it is that you want and how you can achieve those goals. I mean, challenges you're going to face regardless. But if you're able to focus on yourself and make sure that you yourself are adaptable, then you'll be able to respond to any challenge that you face. I think that's sort of what you're leading towards to.
yep, absolutely, I agree with that.
Tensai, we had a question from the audience. I'm not sure if you'd be able to answer it, but it's on the topic of space medicine because you mentioned that that was something you were potentially interested in. Isabel Correa from Angola asks, where does Africa stand on the topic of space medicine? Are they already involved in it right now, or what is the current status, if you know it, of course?
Sorry to cut you off. I need to send a shout out to Isabel because I promised I promised her. Hi Isabel, shout out to you.
Yeah.
Okay. I personally don't think, for example, in our country, I have not seen anyone so far, but I think it would be hard to say at an African level. Can you hear me though?
Yeah, a bit faintly, but we can hear you.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was saying, in Ethiopia, I can probably say like 70%. I'm sure that there's no one. I have to say, but at an African level, I highly doubt. But I know, for example, Ahmed Baraka from Egypt. He's such an amazing person, trying to work on in the space medicine sector. And there's definitely going to be a lot of other people that are working in that sector, but I can't give you like figures or how much people there are. But one thing I would suggest for the person that asked was when I said I wanted to do aerospace engineering, it didn't exist, like literally, as a program in Ethiopia. So the inexistence shouldn't be a problem, especially when we're talking about space, because it's all about the imaginations that we have and the effort that we're putting to bring those imaginations to reality, right? So of course it's really good to have some, thoughts on what the current standing is, but it's also somehow hard, but also cool to be the icebreaker, I would say.
Great. So we'll do one last round of questions. This one will be a bit lighter, a bit easier. So we'll start with you, Muataz. What is your favorite part of what you do? What's your favorite part of your job or of the work you're doing in Egypt right now?
So a favorite part of my job is being able to promote space sustainability, and because there's a lot of risks in space, so actually working on something that will enable the space industry to continue its growth. Favorite part about my what I'm doing in Egypt is planting seeds that would have long-term and short-term benefits for the development of the space industry, and seeing some results and seeing a lot of people being engaged and seeing that it's actually gonna be leading into something. So just being part of that success story is driving my passion, and that's what I'm enjoying every day.
Same question for you, Eldridge. What is your favorite part about project management? What is the favorite part about your job?
Yeah, so the favorite part about my job, being a project manager, being a business developer, is bringing products to life and seeing these products have an impact on people's lives. Like I said earlier, for example, I was I think the last 2 weeks I was working on a project, very intense project, helping provide satellite images over some specific areas in Ethiopia and Burkina Faso that currently the political situation is not so bad and there is some conflicts. So, being able to provide this data and help the people on the ground to make decisions, to help the people on the ground to bring solutions in a very fast way. For me, this is what I love. So seeing the immediate impact, the space industry is an industry that is also full of research, a lot of stuff being developed that has not been yet proven. So I really love working with stuff that's already proven to work, but that has a huge impact specifically for our countries in Africa.
Great. And same question for you, Tensai. What is your favorite part about working at ESS or at SJC?
Okay, so I think I should reply to both ESS and SJC because their target group is a bit
For
different.
sure, yeah.
So ESS, I think I usually have most of my times doing outreach activities and things like that with kids. So most get fascinated, but somehow some of them see me and others as sorcerers, I would say, for example, because and that actually inspires them in some way and try to make them think like when are we going to reach it and like when we would know this and when they get to see how simple it is and especially when you give them like simple experimental things that they can do in their houses and things like that, they get fascinated and then their smile after that is priceless, I would say. From SJC, I would say the best part is so okay. So when I work at SJC, I literally think of it as a work. It's not just volunteering and things like that. I literally take it as a work. But at the same time, I don't feel as it's a work. The environment is not as it's strict, and the boss comes to you and doesn't get to say hi, and tells you to do this and this job, because that's how we see them in movies. So and yeah, so SJC is such a big family for me, um, and a lot of employees in Africa, the events team. Uh, we do a lot of things together with compassion, empathy, and support. So whenever I get to do something, it's okay to not know them, and everyone around you is eager to support and help you to be on top of the class or like be on top of whatever you want to know, right? And yeah, that community sense and the network, the length of the network SBAC has always inspires me and makes me smile every day I open the SGAC account to my
That's awesome. That's great. Awesome. So I think we've reached the end of this webinar. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Eldridge, to Tensai, to Muataz for being a part of this, for offering to share their perspectives, for giving us a lot of insights. If I was to sum it up, the conversation today, I think the main practical takeaway is really to make a plan for yourself. Think long term, think 10, 15 years. What is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how can you apply your own skills within the industry? There's space for everybody. There's a lot of aspects to the industry. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be the best salesman. You don't have to be in management. There's a role for you to play. You first have to know your own strengths. You have to know your own weaknesses, and you have to be ready to work hard and to persevere, because it's not going to be, a straight line to the top, a straight line to the moon. No, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, a lot of zigging and zagging. You might be working somewhere that you're not interested in for a while before you actually get into the industry. You might be in industry and then go out and then come back. Everybody's path is different, but what's the most important is that you grow as a person, that you improve your own life, improve the life of people around you, and find ways to help everybody around you as well. And in terms of knowing how to join the industry, or in terms of if you need like concrete steps, that's what Space Hubs Africa is for. So we are here to try and help Africans on their journey into the space industry. We're doing our best to connect. If you're lacking connections, we will help you network to other people. If you're lacking education, we can point you to some resources. We really want to do our best to support you on your own journey within the industry. So feel free to get in touch with us. You can contact Nelly at spacehubs.africa. You can contact me, Kwaku, at spacehubs.africa. Join our community and be active. You can meet a lot of people within our platform. We want to support you and build the resources that you need along your journey. So feel free to reach out. I'll share obviously all our panelists' LinkedIn information as well, so you can connect with them on LinkedIn. You can talk to them to find out how to join what they're doing or learn from their experiences as well. Before I round it off completely, Nelly, you said something briefly. I wanted to know if you wanted to have any last words as well.
Not exactly. I was actually concurring to the summary you were giving. Today's webinar has been amazing. I almost busted into tears when Martha's and Eldridge were speaking, and I was laughing so hard when Tensi was speaking. So I'm really grateful that we could have them on the panel today.
Awesome. So before we close out, I'll give the floor back to each of the panelists as well, if they have any last words, if they have any things they want to promote, or ways for anybody in our audience to get involved with what they're doing. Eldridge, do you want to start? Any last words? How can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more about what you're doing, or how can they get involved themselves?
Yeah, so if you want to get in touch with me, feel free. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere. Feel free to connect with me. I'm always happy to assist. So as I said earlier, I'm working in a company that is democratizing access to space data. So if you're working with Earth observation data, you're having a hard time getting it, get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to assist you with that.
Tensai, how can people get in touch with you?
I think I'm available almost all over social media, I'd say, but I frequently use Twitter and LinkedIn. So you can easily reach me out via those social medias. Yeah, so one thing I would like to say, like on a footnote, would be, especially when you're in Africa and when you're trying to pursue a career inside there, a lot of things could be, volatile, I would say. The political situations, the already existing infrastructure, the existing plan of the government, or the plans that they have for 10 years, and space is probably not included, totally, for example, and that could be a major strike for you, to do that. But just go ahead and start. That would be my first thing to say. And adaptability, flexibility, and perseverance are very key things. As things don't go on their first shot sometimes, and sometimes they go very long on their first shot. So it's a matter of the coincidence and the opportunity and the effort that you're putting in. So yeah.
Great.
For everyone. Thank you.
And Moataz, last but not least, how can people get in touch with you, and any last words?
Yeah, so reach out to me on LinkedIn, everybody. I would love to have a conversation and see if I can be of any assistance. Last words, plan, be flexible for your plan. Surround yourself with smart people. Get involved. Baby steps are better than no steps. And just work hard and pray. You will hopefully be lucky and you'll be able to implement those plans. But you need to work hard and you need to be persistent. So good luck, everybody. It's been very nice to be with you today. Thank you.
Great. So thank you, everyone. Once again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you for attending this webinar. We will be having regular webinars, so our plan is to continue to have at least one webinar a month on the careers in space. So let us know if there are any other topics you want us to cover in the future. If there are any panelists you want us to talk to, also let us know. Feel free to get in touch. Nelly, do you have any last words?
No, I was going to say we have a plan. I think the central theme for today's discussion was having a plan. And Mothers, I don't know if you're considering being a planning coach or something like that. You have to decide.
Maybe I should switch careers.
Yeah, if it doesn't work out, you can always become a planning coach for sure.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, so thank you everyone. The recorded version of this webinar will be available within our platform, so community.spacehubs.africa/webinars. The highlights will be released next week. So, join follow us on Facebook, like, comment, subscribe, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on YouTube, follow us everywhere on social media. We're available. Feel free to reach out. Thanks a lot for joining us to this webinar, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye. It was a pleasure.